The sensor array flickered with new data, and Rithal felt the familiar rush of anticipation. Another system, another conquest, another addition to the Qunari dominion that would fall without firing a single shot. In his 40 campaigns across the galaxy, he had seen species surrender after merely witnessing what Qunari technology could do. Some begged, some wept, all submitted. The holographic display showed a yellow star with 8 planets orbiting in predictable patterns. The third planet glowed blue and green, teeming with life. Primitive electromagnetic signals bounced through space, the chaotic chatter of a civilization still learning to reach beyond its atmosphere. "Analysis complete, Commander," his tactical officer reported. The tall, gray-skinned officer gestured to the data streams. "They call themselves humans. Technology-level assessment, chemical propulsion, early fusion reactors, basic energy weapons. Current space presence, 3 orbital stations, 17 satellites, and 1 colony on their planetary moon." Rithal's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. 1 moon colony, how ambitious! He had conquered civilizations that spanned 20 systems with less effort than it took to charge his flagship's main weapons. Standard protocol, transmit the ultimatum. The message went out across all frequencies, translated into the dominant human languages through their own communications network. Join the Dominion. Surrender your weapons. Accept peace and prosperity under Qunari guidance, or face obliteration. Rithal expected the usual response pattern. First, denial, then panic, then desperate attempts at negotiation, finally acceptance. The humans would follow the same script every other species had followed for 3 centuries. The reply came faster than expected. A single vessel separated from the orbital cluster around the blue planet. It was small by Qunari standards, barely 200 meters long. Hull plating showed signs of repair and modification. Weapons ports lined its flanks. The humans had designated it a destroyer-class warship, though Rithal would have classified it as barely worthy of the term escort. "They're powering weapons," the tactical officer said, surprise evident in his voice. "1 ship, they're sending 1 ship." "Identify it." Designation, UNSC Defiant. Crew complement approximately 340. Command Officer, Captain Diana Ross. The officer paused, scanning the data. "Commander, they're not transmitting surrender codes. They're transmitting battle readiness across their entire fleet network." Rithal leaned forward in his command throne. This was unexpected, foolish, but unexpected. "What fleet? Our scans show only 12 combat-capable vessels in this entire system." "Confirmed, but they're coordinating. Power signatures indicate they're preparing for engagement." For the first time in years, Rithal felt something other than boredom. Not concern, certainly not fear, but curiosity. Why would they resist? The Defiant could not possibly damage his flagship. Nothing could. The Qunari had perfected warfare millennia ago. Their shields could phase through normal matter. Their weapons could fold space itself, crushing ships from the inside out. They had ended wars by simply appearing in a system and demonstrating their power on an uninhabited moon. "Hail the Defiant directly," Rithal ordered. The view screen shifted, showing the interior of the human vessel. The commander sat in a chair surrounded by display panels and crew stations. She was small, as all humans appeared to be, with dark skin and eyes that held no fear. That should have been his first warning. "I am Fleet Commander Rithal of the Qunari Dominion. You cannot win this engagement. Power down your weapons and accept our terms. This is your final opportunity." Captain Ross smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. "I am Captain Diana Ross of the United Nations Space Command. You have entered our system without permission. You have threatened our home. Here's our final opportunity for you. Turn around and leave. Now." Rithal's mandibles spread wide in genuine surprise. "You understand what we are capable of." "We've intercepted your communications with other systems for the past 6 months," Ross replied. We've studied every conquest you've made in the last decade. We know exactly what you're capable of." She leaned forward. "Do you know what we're capable of? You have chemical rockets and nuclear weapons, primitive armor and basic shields. Against our technology, you are insects." Then this insect is about to sting. Ross made a gesture and the communication cut off. The Defiant's engines flared bright blue, and it accelerated directly toward the Qunari flagship. Rithal nearly laughed. "Tactical, prepare a warning shot. Disable their engines but leave the ship intact. I want them to understand the futility of resistance." The flagship's primary weapon charged, reality itself bending around the focusing array. The shot lanced out, a beam of pure destructive force that had vaporized asteroids and shattered battle stations. The Defiant's shields erupted in cascading energy. The ship shuddered, rolled, and kept coming. "Impossible," the tactical officer whispered. "Their shields held, damaged but held." Rithal stood. "Full power, destroy that ship." The flagship's weapons array opened fire. Energy beams, kinetic projectiles, and spatial distortion waves all converged on the single human destroyer. The Defiant twisted through the barrage with maneuvers that made no tactical sense, revering thrust, spinning on axes that should have torn the ship apart from internal stress. And then the human ship fired back. Railgun projectiles moving at a significant fraction of light speed hammered into the flagship's shields. Nuclear-tipped missiles detonated in precise patterns, creating overlapping blast waves. Then something new hit them, something the sensors couldn't immediately classify. "Hull breach on Deck 7, an officer called out. "Sections 14 through 18 experiencing total system failure." "What hit us?" Rithal demanded. "Electromagnetic pulse weapons, Commander. Crude but effective. They're targeting our sensor arrays." The Defiant rolled beneath the flagship's belly, launching a full spread of torpedoes at point-blank range. Two Qunari escort vessels moved to intercept, and the human ship shifted targets instantly, focusing all firepower on the smaller vessels. One escort's shields collapsed under the sustained barrage. The second lost power to its main engines. Both drifted, helpless. The Defiant was burning, hull breaches venting atmosphere, one engine completely dark, but it had wounded them, actually wounded them. Rithal watched the human ship limp away into the darkness beyond the moon, and for the first time in his military career, he felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. The emergency lights painted everything red inside the Defiant's medical bay. Lieutenant Amy Wilson gritted her teeth as the medical officer extracted shrapnel from her shoulder. Around her, 30 other crew members waited for treatment, some with burns, others with broken bones from when the gravity plating had failed during the engagement. "Hold still," Dr. Richard Hayes muttered, his hands steady despite the ship's occasional shudder. "Almost got it." Amy had been at the weapons station when the Qunari's first full barrage hit. She remembered the shields flaring so bright the viewscreen had to dim automatically. She remembered the deck bucking beneath her feet. She remembered thinking they were all about to die. They hadn't died. Somehow, impossibly, they hadn't died. Captain Ross moved through the medical bay, checking on each wounded crew member. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder and a bruise darkened her left cheek, but she walked with the same calm authority she always carried. "Good shooting, Lieutenant," Ross said, stopping beside Amy's bed. "Those escort vessels won't be threatening anyone for a while." "We barely scratched them, Captain." Amy winced as the doctor pulled the last piece of metal free, "and they tore us apart." "We proved they can bleed," Ross replied. "That's more than any other species has done in 300 years. She glanced at the display showing the ship's status. Engineering estimates 12 hours for basic repairs. Weapons. Railgun 3 is completely gone. Missile tubes 4 and 5 are jammed, but we've got enough left to make them think twice." Amy hesitated. "If they come back." They'll come back, Ross said with certainty. We embarrass them, hurt their pride, they'll want to crush us for that. Across the solar system, aboard the Qunari flagship, Rithal stood in the council chamber facing the holographic representatives of the High Council. 5 members, each commanding entire sectors of the Dominion, looked down at him with expressions ranging from disbelief to anger. You allowed a single primitive vessel to damage our forces, Councillor Vethra said, her voice cold. Explain how this is possible. Rithal chose his words carefully. The humans fight differently than any species we have encountered. They do not seek to match our strength. They exploit weaknesses in our formations, our sensor coverage, our doctrine. Weaknesses? Another counselor, Mordek, leaned forward. Our technology is superior in every measurable way. Superior against opponents who fight as we do, Rithal countered. The humans use weapons we consider obsolete. Kinetic projectiles, chemical explosives, electromagnetic pulses. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons and spatial distortions, not solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. Then adapt, Vethra commanded. You have 50 vessels, they have 12 in this. The holographic projection faded, leaving Rithal alone with his thoughts. He accessed the data his science officers had compiled on humanity. What he found troubled him more than the battle itself. Humans had been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. In that time, they had fought 17 major wars among themselves. Not border skirmishes or political disputes, but actual wars with millions of casualties. They had developed weapons specifically designed to counter their own technology because they assumed any enemy would think like they did. Every human weapon system had backup systems. Every tactic assumed the enemy would adapt. They planned for failure because failure was what they knew. The Qunari had conquered their own world 10,000 years ago and had been united ever since. They had refined warfare into an art, elegant and efficient, but they had never faced an enemy that evolved through constant conflict. Rithal pulled up tactical footage of the Defiant's attack patterns. The human ship had not tried to overpower them. Instead, it had probed their defenses, testing response times, measuring weapon ranges, analyzing shield frequencies. Every maneuver served a purpose beyond simple survival. They were learning. In real time during active combat, the humans were learning. A communication request interrupted his analysis. Rithal accepted it and found himself looking at Captain Ross again. The human woman appeared to be in her command center, crew working at stations behind her. Commander Rithal, she said, I wanted to talk before you make your next move. To surrender, Rithal asked, though he already knew the answer. Ross actually laughed. To warn you, you're about to make a mistake and I'm trying to save you from it. Your ship is crippled. Your fleet is outmatched. What possible warning could you offer? You're thinking about bringing your entire battle group into our system, Ross said. Overwhelming force to crush resistance and make an example of us. It's what you've done on every other world. Rithal said nothing, but his silence was confirmation enough. Here's what you don't understand about humans, Ross continued. We don't have a unified government. We're fractured into dozens of nations and corporations and colonies. We fight each other constantly over resources and territory and ideology. I know this, it makes you weak. It makes us dangerous, Ross corrected. Because when you threatened Earth, every human faction stopped fighting each other and started preparing to fight you. We built this defense fleet in 18 months by pooling resources we were using to aim weapons at each other. Do you understand what that means? Rithal felt his confidence waver. What does it mean? It means we're really good at war, Commander. It's all we've ever known. We've spent 10,000 years figuring out how to kill each other more efficiently. We've faced every type of weapon, every type of tactic, every type of enemy that thinks like we do. Ross leaned closer to her screen. You've conquered 847 systems. How many of them fought back? None that mattered. Exactly, your conquerors were survivors. Ross glanced at something off-screen. Your reinforcements just entered our system. 53 vessels. You're probably feeling confident right now. You cannot win this. No, Ross admitted. But we can make you bleed for every meter of space. We can make this so costly that every other species you've conquered will start wondering if they can resist too. Is Earth worth that risk, Commander? The communication ended before Rithal could respond. He turned to his tactical display, watching the fleet formation approach the inner system. 53 ships against 12. The numbers should have made him confident. They didn't. The asteroid tumbled through space like any of the millions of other rocks in the belt between the fourth and fifth planets. Its surface was scarred with impact craters and covered in dust that had accumulated over billions of years. Nothing about it seemed unusual or threatening. Until it opened fire. Concealed weapons ports slid open along the asteroid's surface. Missiles streaked out, followed by railgun fire that hammered into the nearest Qunari cruiser. The ship's shields flared and held, but the surprise attack had achieved its goal. The Qunari fleet broke formation, ships scattering to identify the threat. By the time they targeted the asteroid, it had gone cold and silent again, indistinguishable from the hundreds of thousands of other rocks surrounding them. Report, Rithal commanded, frustration evident in his voice. Minimal damage to the cruiser Sovereign Dawn, his tactical officer replied. But Commander, we cannot identify which asteroid fired on us. There are too many. Then destroy them all. That would take weeks and deplete our weapons reserves significantly. Rithal's mandibles clicked in irritation. The humans had abandoned their orbital stations. Earth itself appeared undefended, its cities lit up with electricity and communication signals. It should have been a simple matter to force their surrender by threatening the home world. Instead, the humans had scattered, mining stations throughout the belt, colony ships hiding in the shadow of the gas giant, cargo haulers that transmitted civilian signals but moved like military vessels. The Qunari could not tell civilian from military, could not predict where the next attack would come from. Another missile volley erupted from a different section of the belt, this time from what appeared to be a damaged cargo container drifting near a mining station. The missiles were crude, chemically propelled, moving slowly enough that point defense systems destroyed most of them. One got through. It detonated against a destroyer's hull, the nuclear blast overwhelming shields that were already compensating for the radiation environment of the belt. Hull breach on the destroyer Radiant Truth, an officer reported. No casualties but weapons array offline. This is absurd, Rithal growled. They are using trash and rocks as weapons platforms. Effective trash and rocks, Commander, his science officer noted. They are forcing us to waste ammunition on false targets while wearing down our shields with attacks from unexpected vectors. A new signal appeared on the tactical display. The Defiant, still damaged but operational, emerged from behind one of the larger asteroids. It was not alone. 3 other human destroyers accompanied it, moving in a tight formation. All ships target the human vessels, Rithal ordered. Maximum firepower, end this now. The Qunari fleet converged, weapons charging. But the human ships did not engage. Instead, they fired a spread of missiles and immediately reversed thrust, diving back into the dense asteroid field where the larger Qunari vessels could not easily follow. The missiles were not aimed at ships. They detonated among the asteroids themselves, fragmenting rocks into clouds of smaller debris that spread across the Qunari formation. Shields holding, Tactical reported. But the debris is interfering with our sensors. We cannot get a clean lock on the human ships. Send fighters, Rithal commanded. Small craft can navigate the field. 20 Qunari fighters launched, sleek vessels designed for precision strikes. They dove into the asteroid belt, sensors scanning for the human destroyers. The fighters found them. They also found something else. Mines. Thousands of mines disguised as asteroid fragments, drifting in the debris field, waiting. The fighters' high-speed approach triggered proximity detonations. Nuclear fire blossomed among the asteroids. 17 fighters were destroyed instantly. The remaining 3 retreated, damaged and blind. Aboard the Defiant, Captain Ross watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. How many missiles do we have left? 42 conventional, 6 nuclear, Lieutenant Amy Wilson reported from the weapons station. Railgun ammunition at 30%. We're running out of everything, Captain. Then we make every shot count. Ross opened a channel to the other human ships scattered through the system. All vessels, execute pattern Sigma. Hit them from every direction at once. Make them choose which threat to address. Across the solar system, human ships that had been hiding activated their drives. Destroyers from behind planetary moons. Frigates from the outer system. Even the civilian vessels that had been evacuating the orbital stations turned and accelerated toward the Qunari fleet. The civilians were not armed with military weapons. They carried mining lasers, industrial cutters, and cargo containers filled with ore and metal fragments. Improvised weapons that would do minimal damage individually. But there were dozens of them, all converging at once. Rithal watched his tactical display fill with targets, too many to prioritize, too many to defend against simultaneously. This is madness. They are sacrificing civilian vessels. Analysis suggests the civilian craft are operating on remote control, Commander, the science officer said. No life signs detected. Automated kamikaze vessels. The humans were using drones decades before the Qunari had developed similar technology, because they had been fighting wars where every casualty mattered. The Qunari fleet's weapons fired in all directions, destroying the approaching civilian vessels. But the effort split their formation, created gaps in their defensive screens. The real attack came from the human destroyers, emerging from the asteroid field to strike at the exposed flanks of Qunari cruisers. Order the fleet to retreat to high orbit above the third planet, Rithal said. Regroup at a safe distance from their ambush points. Commander, if we establish orbit over their world, we can force their surrender by threatening bombardment. Do it. The Qunari fleet pulled back, climbing out of the asteroid belt toward Earth. It felt like a tactical withdrawal, a repositioning to gain advantage. Rithal knew better. It felt like retreat. The human vessels did not pursue. They remained in the belt, hidden among the rocks, waiting. Ross received a communication from Earth's Defense Coordination Center. Fleet Command wants to know our status, Captain. Can we continue the fight? Ross looked at her crew, exhausted, wounded, down to minimal ammunition and running on backup power systems. Tell them we can fight for another week if we have to. The Qunari don't need to know we're barely holding together. And if they call our bluff, then we find out how much damage a crippled ship can do on its last run. Ross studied the enemy formation above Earth. But I don't think they will. They thought this would be easy. Every hour we survive, every ship we damage, we prove them wrong. The Defiant's engines burned low and steady, conserving fuel, staying hidden in the shadow of an asteroid that was older than human civilization. Waiting for the next move. Sergeant Thomas Green checked his rifle one last time. The weapon was old, designed for ground combat, not ship-to-ship boarding actions. It fired solid projectiles instead of energy beams, primitive by Qunari standards. But it would work in environments where energy weapons might puncture a hull and kill everyone. 2 minutes to contact, the pilot's voice crackled through his helmet. Boarding pods are armed and ready. Green looked at the 19 Marines crammed into the assault pod with him. Most were young, some barely out of training. They wore heavy armor and carried enough ammunition to fight for hours. They also carried grenades, breaching charges, and flame units. Equipment the Kunari would consider barbaric. "Listen up," Green said, his voice calm despite his racing heart. "The Kunari are bigger than us, stronger too. They have better armor and weapons that can bend space. You know what we have." The Marines waited. "We have 10,000 years of killing each other in close quarters. We know how to fight in hallways and rooms and ventilation shafts. We have been boarding enemy ships since we figured out how to build boats. This is what we do." He checked his rifle's magazine. "Stick to your teams, watch your corners, and remember, we are not here to destroy their flagship. We are here to make them afraid." The assault pod shuddered as it detached from the Defiant. 4 other pods launched simultaneously, each carrying a team of Marines. They were not headed for the Kunari flagship alone. 6 human destroyers provided covering fire, forcing the Kunari escorts to break formation. The flagship's point defense systems destroyed 2 pods. The remaining 3 punched through the weakened shields and slammed into the hull, breaching charges detonating to create entry points. Green's pod hit hard enough to rattle his teeth. The forward hatch blew open, and he led his team into a Kunari corridor. The passageway was tall, designed for beings over 2 meters in height. Lighting came from strips along the ceiling that pulsed with a faint blue glow. Alarms wailed throughout the ship. Automated defenses activated, weapon turrets dropping from concealed ports in the ceiling. Green's team scattered, using their smaller size to take cover behind structural supports that the Kunari designers had not considered as protection. Gunfire echoed in the corridor. Human rifles cracked. Kunari energy weapons hummed. A Marine to Green's left took a hit to the chest, her armor absorbing most of the blast but still throwing her backward. "Suppressing fire," Green shouted. His team concentrated their shots on the automated turrets, solid projectiles tearing through delicate targeting sensors. The turrets went offline one by one. The first Kunari security team arrived 30 seconds later. 6 warriors in powered armor, each carrying weapons that crackled with contained energy. They were impressive, disciplined, moving in perfect formation. Green threw a grenade. The Kunari scattered, their formation breaking. The grenade detonated, shrapnel tearing through armor joints and optical sensors. It was not elegant, it was not sophisticated, but it worked. Human Marines rushed forward while the Kunari were disoriented. Close quarters combat, rifle butts against helmets, knives finding gaps in armor. The kind of desperate, ugly fighting that humans had perfected over millennia of war. The Kunari were stronger individually, but the humans were faster, smaller, and fought with a viciousness born from knowing they were outmatched. They used the environment, ducking through maintenance hatches too small for Kunari warriors, doubling back through ventilation systems, striking from unexpected angles. "Command deck is 12 levels up," Green's tactical display showed. "We need to move." The Marine teams spread through the flagship, forcing the Kunari to defend multiple breaches simultaneously. They did not try to hold territory. They moved constantly, hitting and running, denying the defenders a chance to organize a concentrated response. Green's team fought their way to a lift shaft. Instead of using the lift, they rappelled up the shaft itself, using magnetic clamps to ascend while Kunari security fired down at them. 2 more Marines died in that shaft, but the rest made it to the command deck level. The corridors here were different, wider, with better lighting and what appeared to be decorative elements on the walls. This was officer territory. "Breaching charges on the command deck door," Green ordered. The charges detonated, blowing the reinforced door inward. The team rushed through into a large chamber filled with holographic displays and control stations. Kunari officers scrambled for weapons. Some tried to activate emergency protocols. Green shot the main display, shattering it in a shower of sparks. This deck is compromised. Set the charges and fall back. His demolitions expert worked quickly, placing explosive packages on critical systems. The charges were not enough to destroy the flagship, but they would cripple its command and control capabilities. A new figure entered the command chamber, taller than the other Kunari, wearing armor marked with symbols of rank. Fleet Commander Rithal himself. "You fight well," Rithal said in surprisingly clear English. "But you cannot win. Even if you damage this ship, the fleet remains. Your world will fall." "Maybe," Green replied, "but you will remember this. Every time you threaten a new world, you will remember that humans made you bleed in your own command center." Captain Ross's voice crackled through Green's helmet. "Sergeant, charges are set throughout the ship. Get your people out, now." "You heard the captain," Green said to his team. "Move." The Marines retreated, fighting their way back to the boarding pods. Kunari security had organized now, establishing defensive positions. The withdrawal was bloodier than the assault. More Marines fell. But they had trained for this, practiced fighting outnumbered against superior forces. Because that was every battle humans had ever fought in space. Green's team made it back to their pod with 7 Marines. They had started with 20. He sealed the hatch and hit the emergency launch, the pod blasting away from the Kunari flagship. Through the pod's viewport, he watched the flagship's lights flicker. Then the charges detonated. Not a single massive explosion, but dozens of smaller ones throughout the vessel, critical systems failing, life support compromised in multiple sections, the reactor containment wavering. The Kunari crew would survive. The flagship would not be destroyed, but it would be helpless for hours while damage control teams struggled to restore basic functions. And every Kunari warrior aboard would remember that humans had walked through their corridors and forced them to fight for every meter of their own ship. Ross's voice came through on the general channel, broadcast to all human vessels. "All ships withdraw to Rally Point Gamma. We have made our statement." Green leaned back in the pod's acceleration seat, exhausted, grief already setting in for the Marines who had not made it back. But underneath the grief was something else. Pride. They had faced an empire that had conquered hundreds of worlds, and they had made that empire hesitate. The High Council chamber fell silent as the damage reports finished. Rithal stood before the 5 counselors, their holographic forms towering over him despite the vast distances separating them. Behind him, tactical displays showed the cost of the engagement. 7 ships damaged beyond immediate repair, 3 destroyers completely disabled, the flagship itself requiring evacuation of 4 decks. And the casualties. For the first time in 300 years of conquest, the Kunari Dominion had suffered combat deaths. 143 warriors, Counselor Vethra said, her voice carrying a weight that made Rithal's chest tighten. Lost to a species that should have surrendered in hours. "The humans are unlike any enemy we have faced," Rithal began. "They are primitives," Counselor Mordek interrupted, "with outdated weapons and fractured leadership. Yet they have inflicted more damage on our fleet than the last 50 campaigns combined. Explain this, Commander." Rithal accessed his data files, projecting tactical analyses into the council chamber. The humans have been at war with themselves for their entire history. They have refined combat doctrine through constant conflict. Every weapon system they possess is designed with redundancy because they assume enemy adaptation. They fight in ways we never anticipated because we have never faced an opponent that fights like they do. "You said you would crush their resistance," Vethra reminded him. "I have discovered that crushing resistance requires understanding what you are facing." Rithal pulled up footage from the boarding action. Kunari warriors fighting human Marines in close quarters. The humans were smaller, individually weaker, but they moved through corridors with practiced efficiency. They know how to board ships. They have been conducting naval warfare for thousands of years. We stopped needing such tactics millennia ago when our weapons became powerful enough to destroy vessels at range. Counselor Pelvin, who had been silent until now, spoke. What concerns me more than the tactical situation is the strategic implication. Our subject species are watching. If humans can resist the Dominion, others will attempt the same. The council chamber's displays shifted, showing star maps of Dominion space. Red indicators marked systems where unrest had begun. Nothing serious yet, just protests and work slowdowns. But the pattern was clear. The Trell system has stopped sending tribute, another counselor noted. The Varan colonies are demanding renegotiation of their integration terms. Species that accepted our rule without question are now questioning. Rithal felt the weight of responsibility settling on him. This was no longer just about conquering one primitive world. This was about maintaining an empire built on the assumption of inevitable victory. We have three options, Vethra said. We can commit additional forces and overwhelm the humans through sheer numbers. We can withdraw and accept our first defeat, which may encourage widespread rebellion, or we can negotiate. Negotiate. Mordak's hologram flickered with agitation. We do not negotiate with species we are conquering. We have never needed to, Pelvin countered. Perhaps that is the problem. Our empire was built on easy victories against unprepared opponents. The humans are forcing us to adapt or fail. The council debated for hours. Rithal listened as they weighed military strategy against political necessity, pride against pragmatism. Finally, Vethra made the decision. Commander Rithal, you will make contact with the human leadership, not to offer terms of surrender, to discuss terms of engagement. The transmission request went out on all frequencies. It took 6 hours for the humans to respond. When they did, it was not a military officer who appeared on Rithal's screen. It was an elderly man in civilian clothing, identified as Secretary General Liu Wei of the United Nations. Commander Rithal, Secretary Liu said, I understand you wish to talk. The High Council has authorized me to discuss an end to hostilities, Rithal replied carefully. An end to your invasion, you mean? Liu's expression remained neutral. What are you offering? Recognition of human sovereignty over your system, cessation of military action, a trade agreement that would grant you access to Qunari technology and markets. In exchange for your agreement not to encourage resistance among our subject species, your recognition of Dominion authority beyond your borders, and access to your military tactical data. Liu was quiet for a long moment. You want to learn how we fight. Your species has something we have lost, Rithal admitted. The ability to adapt under pressure, the willingness to sacrifice for survival. We have been dominant for so long that we forgot how to struggle. And if we refuse, then this war continues until one of us can no longer sustain it. We have more ships. You have more determination. The question is which resource proves more valuable. Secretary Liu turned to consult with others outside the frame. Rithal could hear muffled voices, arguments in multiple languages. The humans were debating among themselves, their fractured nature making even basic decisions complicated. When Liu turned back, his expression had hardened. We will accept a ceasefire, not a peace treaty, not an alliance. A ceasefire. We keep our sovereignty. You withdraw from our system. We agree not to actively encourage rebellion in your empire, but we will defend any species that asks for our help. The Council will not accept that final term. Then we keep fighting. Liu leaned closer to his screen. Commander, your empire is built on fear and superior technology. Ours is built on survival and adaptation. We have been the underdog in every conflict we have ever fought. We know how to turn disadvantages into weapons. You can either accept that we will never surrender, or you can waste your fleet trying to prove us wrong. Rithal considered his options. The flagship was damaged. His warriors were shaken. facing an enemy that had proven capable of killing them. The Empire's stability depended on the appearance of invincibility, and the humans had shattered that appearance. "I will present your terms to the High Council," he said finally. The High Council's response came within the hour. They accepted the ceasefire with modifications. No joint defense pact, no active recruitment of Dominion species, but recognition of human territory and establishment of trade relations. It was the first time in Dominion history that they had negotiated with a species they had intended to conquer. Captain Ross received the news aboard the Defiant. Her ship was barely functional, held together by emergency repairs and her crew's determination. They had lost 83 people. The other human vessels had lost hundreds more. But they had not surrendered. "What do you think, Captain?" Lieutenant Wilson asked. "Can we trust them?" Ross looked at Earth through the viewport. "Blue and green and fragile. We trust them to act in their own interest. Right now, their interest is not fighting us. Tomorrow that might change." She turned to her crew. "We prepare for both possibilities. We build, we train. We make sure that if they ever come back, we are ready." The Defiant's engines burned as it began the long journey back to Earth. Behind it, the Qunari fleet withdrew, their formation no longer confident but cautious. Both sides had learned something. The Qunari had learned that conquest had a price. The humans had learned they could survive against impossible odds. The galaxy would never be quite the same. 5 years after the ceasefire, the Qunari embassy on the newly constructed station above Earth was still an uncomfortable sight for many humans. The towering gray-skinned aliens walked the corridors alongside human diplomats, scientists, and merchants. Trade flowed between species that had almost annihilated each other. But trust was a different matter. Commander Rithal, now serving as military liaison rather than conqueror, stood in an observation deck watching Earth rotate below. The blue planet had become something unexpected to him, not a prize to be claimed, but a puzzle to be understood. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Captain Ross approached from behind, her footsteps quiet despite the station's metal deck. She had been promoted to admiral after the war, now overseeing Earth's defensive fleet. The Defiant had been retired after one final mission, turned into a museum ship orbiting the moon. "Your world is remarkably fragile," Rithal observed. "One attack, and billions would die, yet you defend it with determination that makes it seem invincible." "Because it is ours." Ross joined him at the viewport. "You have conquered 800 systems, Commander, but do any of them feel like home to you?" Rithal's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "The Dominion is our home, all of it." "Exactly, you have everything and nothing." Ross pulled up a holographic display showing trade data. "Your economy is 3 times larger than ours. Your technology is centuries ahead, but your people are not happy. The data shows it. Depression rates, substance abuse, a population that has forgotten how to strive for something. And humans are happy living in constant conflict." "We are engaged," Ross corrected. "Every generation faces challenges. We argue, we compete, we push each other to improve. It is exhausting and frustrating and sometimes violent, but it keeps us sharp." A communication alert interrupted them. Rithal accessed it, and his expression shifted to something humans might interpret as concern. "One of our subject species has declared independence. The Trell system. They are demanding the same terms you negotiated." "Are you asking for my advice or informing me?" "Both." Rithal displayed tactical information. "The Trell are not warriors like you. They are philosophers and artists. They have no military fleet. If we send forces to reassert control, they will surrender immediately." "But you will have learned nothing," Ross said, "and other species will see that resistance is futile." "What would you do?" Ross studied the data. "I would let them go. Make the same trade agreement you made with us. Show your other subjects that there are alternatives to submission or rebellion." The High Council will never accept that. They see your example as an aberration. They believe the Dominion must be held together through strength. Then the Dominion will eventually collapse, Ross said bluntly. You cannot hold hundreds of worlds by force alone. Eventually, the cost of maintaining control will exceed the benefits. You need your subjects to want to be part of the Empire. Rithal was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried an uncertainty that would have been unthinkable before meeting humans. Your species has fundamentally altered how we see ourselves. Before Earth, we believed we had achieved perfection, an empire that would last eternally because none could challenge it. And now we see the cracks, the weaknesses that come from never being tested. He turned to face Ross directly. The High Council has asked me to propose something unprecedented, a mutual defense pact, not between the Dominion and humanity as subjects, but as equals. Ross raised her eyebrows. Equals, that is a significant change in perspective. The galaxy is vast. There are threats we have not yet encountered, species that may prove more dangerous than either of us alone. Rithal pulled up star charts showing unexplored regions. We offer technological advancement and infrastructure. You offer tactical innovation and resilience. Together, we would be stronger than separately. And the other Dominion species, do they get the same choice? The Council is debating that question now. Your influence has created divisions among us. Some believe we should return to traditional methods of control. Others see an opportunity to evolve into something different. Ross considered the proposal carefully. I need to consult with the Security Council and the member nations. This is not a decision I can make alone. Understood, but Admiral, I want you to know something. Rithal gestured toward Earth. When I first saw your world, I saw a prize. Resources to exploit, labor to utilize, territory to claim. Now I see what makes you dangerous. What is that? You never forget that survival is not guaranteed. Every generation of humans knows that existence is a fight. That makes you adaptable in ways we have forgotten. His mandibles spread in what Ross had learned was a sign of respect. We conquered 800 worlds without effort, but you conquered us without ever leaving your own system. You changed how we think about power and purpose. The debate on Earth lasted for months. Some nations argued for accepting the alliance. Others feared it was a trap. Still others questioned whether humanity should tie itself to an empire built on conquest. In the end, the vote was close. The alliance was approved with strict conditions: equal representation in joint operations, no Kunari military presence in the Sol system without invitation, regular reviews of the partnership terms. Secretary-General Liu, now elderly and near retirement, made the announcement. We are not joining the Dominion. We are creating something new. A partnership between species that respects sovereignty while acknowledging mutual benefit. This is not the peace of submission. This is the peace of equals who choose cooperation. Across Dominion space, the announcement had immediate effects. 3 more systems declared independence, demanding similar partnership terms. The High Council, facing the choice between endless military commitments or fundamental restructuring, chose evolution. The Dominion began to change, slowly, painfully, but change nonetheless. Admiral Ross watched from the observation deck as the first joint patrol departed. Human destroyers flying alongside Kunari cruisers, their formation coordinated through shared tactical networks. It was not trust, not yet, but it was a beginning. Rithal stood beside her. Do you think this will work? I think we will both spend the next century finding out, Ross replied, and probably arguing about it the entire time. Very human of you. Very Kunari of you to assume you know what that means. Rithal's mandibles clicked in what Ross had learned to recognize as amusement. 2 species that had almost destroyed each other, now bound by necessity and curiosity. The galaxy watched to see what would happen next.